Chapter 25, Sirius. The 2019-2020 winter was wearing on me mentally. The drama in Lansing was continuous. I did my best to avoid it, but just being where I was, it brought the drama to me. I wanted out. Lex had helped me buy a car. She invited me to use that car to come stay in Manhattan. I liked the idea, and I made the necessary trip to my storage unit to grab the belongings I wanted with me in New York City. Though Elaine had asked me to leave her house in upstate New York months earlier, she had later apologized. We had been back in contact with one another, and Elaine wished to see me again. I had other friends in upstate New York I wished to see as well. Before I drove to Manhattan to stay with Lex, I stayed in Poughkeepsie again for a short while. One afternoon, I was alone at Elaine's house while she was at work. She texted and told me that she looked forward to intimacy with me once she returned home. I decided to take a shower and make some videos. I figured the best way to create any sort of video content was to set up the camera outside the bathtub and just let it record the entire time I was in the shower. At some point in the shower, I decided to shave. I lifted the razor up to the shower head to rinse it out. I lowered my hand with the razor from up by the shower head. My hand dropped down to my side. As it did, I felt a sudden sharp pain in a sensitive location. My mouth dropped open as my eyes suddenly widened. I looked down as I grabbed myself by the base. Blood was pouring from me. I'd cut the end of myself from the hold to the bottom of the head. I looked at my phone, still recording video, and I laughed when I realized I had the incident on video. I stayed in the shower and poured blood for the next half hour. I wrapped myself in gauze and sent the video to Elaine. I don't think intimacy is going to be possible tonight. I'm sorry. After multiple stops to visit friends, I drove around to take the George Washington Bridge to enter Manhattan from New Jersey. I paid the $16 toll and I crossed the bridge. The traffic on the FDR was bumper to bumper, but cars were moving at a fast pace. Ambulances and police cruisers with sirens and flashing lights were all over the freeway, stuck in the traffic the same as every other vehicle. Nobody moved over for them. There were never any open lanes into which to move. After I thrice circled the block on the corner of 23rd Street and the FDR in Midtown Manhattan, I finally found a parking space. Lex came down and helped me with some of my bags. She used her key card to open the door to her apartment building. Once I had everything in Lex's apartment, the two of us shared intimacy for the first time in our lives. Lex went to bed afterward. I stayed awake to record the sunrise over the East River from the 8th floor apartment. Lex worked on the weekdays. She also went to work for her company's Texas office every other week for long weekends. I had a lot of time to myself. I walked to meet people from the internet in Midtown Manhattan. I preferred to walk because it was hard to find a parking space in the city. There was a parking garage close to Lex's apartment complex. It would have cost me hundreds of dollars a month to put my car in a garage. Any of the metered spaces on the streets would have cost far more than the parking garages. Instead, I chose to follow the rules of the street signs. If I was fortunate enough to find a spot on the service drive of 23rd Street, I had to be sure I knew how long I was able to park. The signs in the streets were confusing. Days, hours, special situations, all were indicated on the signs. Signs posted with other signs superseded even more signs. Some days, loading zones were a factor. Some days, street cleaning was a factor. Most mornings required at least 2 moves in my car. I would go downstairs and walk to wherever my car was parked. If I didn't choose to remain in my car, I would have to find another parking space before I could go back inside. If I chose to wait in my car for events such as street cleaning, I would pull out of the space when the street sweeper was a couple spaces behind me and try to race around the block to get back to the space before some other car parked in it. I was barely ever lucky enough to drive around the block and still have my parking space available. Often, it would be a car I drove behind, one which had pulled out of a space in front of me, who ended up taking my spot when we both reached the original side of the building. The stress from trying to find a parking spot anywhere in Midtown Manhattan was enough to make me walk to any destination within a 10-block radius of the apartment complex. I walked outside one evening to drive somewhere. I had parking tickets underneath my windshield wiper. I got a ticket for not having a front license plate. Though my back plate was an out-of-state Ohio license plate, New York City hit me with the infraction. I also had a ticket for the clear license plate cover which I had transferred from the BMW to the back of my Lexus. It was absolutely clear, yet I was hit with obstructing visibility of my back license plate. On the days Lex worked, she ordered food when she came home in the evenings. Lex and I walked around Midtown Manhattan after we ate our food. She took me to markets and cafes. She showed me around her 185-building apartment community. The buildings had their own library, a park, and even an ice skating rink during the winter months. Lex took me to the building which housed the head office of the apartment community. A lady working behind the desk took my picture. The lady had me fill out some paperwork with my personal information. I was given a photo ID and a key card showing I was a resident of the apartment community. I no longer needed to be buzzed in when I went out to move my car to other parking spaces. I didn't need anyone to operate the intercoms or the elevators after that. I was able to come and go as I pleased. For reasons unknown to me, one of the dating apps on my phone locked me out of my profile. Instead of attempting to get back into the old profile, I created a new one at noon one day in Manhattan. I then forgot about it until the evening. I checked the app at 5 o'clock that same day. I had 75 messages from women in Manhattan who wished to meet me. 75 messages in the 5 hours since I had made my new profile. I spent the next week being taken out to dinner at fancy restaurants in various parts of the city. The women were doctors, fashion designers, business owners, television news personalities, and wealthy entrepreneurs. I enjoyed the fine dining experiences, but I knew I didn't fit in with that part of society. I never slept with any of the ladies. I did share a sweet and memorable kiss on the sidewalk with one of those women after we finished eating dinner at an exclusive restaurant in Greenwich Village. I agreed to meet the woman for dinner one evening. I was on a return trip from New Jersey that particular day. The restaurant was conveniently located close to where I had just returned to Manhattan through the Holland Tunnel. I even managed to find a decent parking space close to the restaurant with minimal effort. That evening in Greenwich Village had gone better than my time earlier that day in Newark, New Jersey. The day prior to that, I began interacting with an Asian transgender girl on a different app on my phone. We video called that night. She invited me to her house in Newark. We agreed on a time that next morning for me to see her. The girl was 24 and she still lived with her family. I have total privacy though. The back part was converted to my own apartment. I took the Holland Tunnel into New Jersey. I pulled up to Mika's house right on time, 11 o'clock in the morning. Mika walked out from the back of her house and into my car. Mika and I drove around for a while as we talked and decided where we wanted to eat. We found a little college-like area with a movie theater and rows of restaurants on each side of the street. Once we finished eating lunch, we headed back to Mika's house. Mika and I spent the next 4 hours naked in her bed. We made love, rested, cuddled, and we made love some more. During our intimacy, I took a minute to order food from an app on my phone. We both had worked up another appetite. Time went by and the two of us continued to interact unclothed in Mika's bedroom apartment at the back of her house. Eventually, my hunger and curiosity got the best of me. The food should have been to us long ago. It wasn't. The app indicated that the food had been delivered. I had specified that the delivery driver needed to knock on the door at the back of the house. I doubted we had missed the knock. Though we were enjoying each other in bed, the door was only feet from where we were being intimate. I spent the next half hour on the phone with customer service. Sir, it's up to the driver how they proceed if nobody answers the door. Nobody ever even knocked. That doesn't matter. What happened to the food? Sir, I don't have an answer for you. They didn't offer any resolution. Eventually I gave up. It was getting late. I had a date in Greenwich Village, which I didn't want to miss. Before I came to Manhattan, I had ordered my first tattoo kit. The kit came to Dan's house in Lansing while I was staying there. I tattooed myself for the first time before I drove out to New York. It was during my days in that 8th floor apartment in Manhattan when I began to cover my left arm in ink. Manhattan was where I started the process, a process which became normal for me as I traveled. Though Lex had no tattoos and didn't want me to tattoo her, my practice on myself became my first step to tattooing many other people. Lex didn't do crystal, so I did hot rails by myself while I was in Manhattan, unless I happened to visit someone who was also into partying. The entire time I was away from the Midwest, I was constantly receiving messages from people wanting me to come back to party. A friend of mine who lived in Ann Arbor sent me a message. That message made me realize I needed to return so I could stack money again. The amount I knew I was going to make was enough for me to return to the Midwest. On the day I left Manhattan, I had one more stop in the area to make. A Greek girl in her 20s had been interacting with me for about a week. I told her I was going to stop and see her on my way out of the city. I crossed the Williamsburg Bridge to Queens and spent the afternoon with her. As I dropped her off and prepared to leave New York, my phone finally completely broke as a result of falling in Cedar Falls at Hocking Hills almost a year earlier. I was fed up with electronics in general. I drove back across the bridge to Manhattan, and I drove across the George Washington Bridge into New Jersey. It was nighttime as I crossed the state. When I reached the Delaware Water Gap, I barely had time to grab an older phone to record video while I drove past a forest fire on the side of a mountain. My old phone had a battery issue which caused it to lose all of its charge within 10 minutes, but that was enough time for me to record the forest fire around me. I posted the video, then the phone died. I stopped at a rest stop when I got tired of driving. I was between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I managed to drive from New York City to the Midwest without GPS. I put the shades in my car's windows, and I spent a few hours videoing back and forth with a girl from Brooklyn while my old phone remained charging on a battery pack as I used it. The next morning, I continued to Michigan. By late afternoon, it was raining while I was on I-96 approaching Lansing. Dan was hanging out at an apartment which two of our friends rented. Simon and Caleb had been dating since autumn of 2019. They moved in together around the same time they began dating. Simon was black, Caleb was white. Simon was tall, Caleb was not. Simon was an aspiring hip-hop dancer and singer. Caleb was ex-military. Simon had never been with a woman. Caleb had never been with a man until he met Simon. Simon did drugs, Caleb did drugs. I texted Dan to let him know I was on the interstate 10 minutes from the apartment. I quickly turned off my old phone so it would still have a little bit of charge. The rain had intensified. I was driving 70 miles an hour despite the rain. Had I known I had worn the tread off my tires from all my travel, I most likely would have been a bit more careful in the rain. Suddenly, my car began to hydroplane on the wet road. Before I knew it, I spun halfway around and I was sliding down the interstate backward. I could see the looks of shock on the faces of the couple in the car behind me. I was facing them as they were driving forward. I was traveling at almost 70 miles an hour backward. My car drifted toward the median, which separated the two directions of traffic. My Lexus cut a quarter mile of muddy tracks into the median as I hydroplaned off the road and into the grass. At one point, my car lifted onto two wheels. I hoped to not flip over. Beside me in the driver's seat, my car was packed full of heavy bags and other items I had failed to drop off at my storage unit. As I began to slow, the right side of my car lowered, and all four wheels slid along the ground again. I was still sliding backward toward the ditch in the center of the median, but at least I wasn't upside down. It was the ditch itself which finally stopped my car. I was facing the wrong way, and the water of the ditch came up to the bottom of my car doors. I pushed my door down into the water and climbed out of my car. That couple in the car that was behind me stopped their car on the shoulder. "Are you alright?" "I'm good. Can you call the police for me? You don't need to wait around." Besides being submerged to the bottom of the car doors in a ditch which was slowly rising as the rain continued to fall, I only noticed one part of my car which was damaged. The bumper I replaced just prior to heading to New York was ripped from my car. I found half of it hundreds of yards from my car's resting place in the ditch. It was shredded. I left it there. My concern soon switched to the rising water. Two police cruisers arrived. "You're alright? Can I see your information?" "Sure, give me a second." I ran back down into the median through the wet grass and weeds. I climbed back in my car and turned on my phone with the short-lasting battery. I pulled up my insurance website and I entered my information. My policy had expired. I sat for another 5 minutes, praying that my phone didn't die on me as I renewed my policy while the water level rose higher around my car. I ran with my dying phone back up the wet grass to the police cruisers on the shoulder of the highway. I handed an officer my phone to record my insurance information. "Can I have that back as soon as possible? The battery's gonna die." "Can you call me a tow truck?" As soon as my phone was handed back to me, I texted Dan my location and shut it off. "A tow truck's on the way." "Thank you. I'm headed back to my car. The water's rising. I need to get some stuff moved around quick." I managed to fill my seats with my belongings at the same time the water began to flow into my car from the driver's side, the sides of which angled downward in the middle of the ditch. I grabbed my laptop bag and my backpack full of drugs. I shut the door to the car. I went back up the road where the police were sitting. When the wrecker showed up, I helped the tow truck driver hook the chains to my car. The wrecker pulled my Lexus up to the road in front of the police cruisers. I turned my phone on for a minute to see if Dan had replied. I had texted him my location so he would come to help me out. I had a text message reply. Dan told me he had driven by, but he didn't stop when he saw the police were there with me. I turned my phone off again. The driver of the tow truck asked me where I wanted my car towed. I thought for a second. I had an idea. My car was caked in mud and grass. I had no front bumper again. Unlike the time before, when I had hit the cement barricade on the overpass in Ann Arbor, I did still have both headlights. I told the tow truck driver to hold on while I talked to the officers. Guys, I have an idea. Instead of being towed somewhere, I just want to drive the car if I can still get it to start. We don't see an issue with that. I'm good then? Technically, we could cite you for traveling at unsafe speeds in relation to the road conditions, but the evening you're having already seems rough. Go ahead. Alright guys, thanks for the help. I stepped back into my mud-covered car and prayed to myself again. I prayed that the bumper was the only thing broken on my car. I tried to start the engine, and it started on the first try. I put my car in drive and I took off. One more time, I powered up my phone. Dan called me seconds later. I'm up and running. Where do you want me to meet you? We met in a parking lot at the next exit from the interstate. Dan then followed me back to his house. I once again had to order parts for my Lexus. I decided to upgrade, and I ordered a $900 custom Lexus bumper with the new wider mouth grille. It was the bumper I always wished was on the car anyhow.